a very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Like always, get ready to catch up on the biggest international news of the week. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. Huge protests erupt across Bangladesh as court imposes death sentence on an Islamic leader for war crimes. World Panorama takes a closer look. UN report confirms sarin gas was used on August 21st. Syrian president says it will take a year and $1 billion to get rid of chemical weapons. Rare twin storms batter Mexico. At least 100 people killed. Scores still missing as Hurricane Manuel hits land in northern Mexico. And Egyptian security forces move against Islamist stronghold of Kerdasa. One police officer killed as clashes continue. Our top story this week. Bangladesh's Supreme Court sentenced an Islamist leader to death for war crimes on Tuesday, overturning a life sentence imposed by a tribunal earlier, triggering outrage from his lawyers and protests from his supporters. The War Crimes Tribunal back in February found Abdul Kader Mollah, Assistant Secretary General of the outlawed Jamaat-e-Islami party, guilty of murder, rape and torture during the 1971 War of Independence. Now, Mollah, the fourth highest Jamaat leader, is the first politician to be found guilty by the Supreme Court after it rejected an appeal to acquit him of all charges. The tribunal verdict was delivered amid violent street campaigns by Jamaat across the country and its pockets, known to be its stronghold, leading to violence that left over 150 people dead since February. Now, on the other hand, elections are not far. Political tensions and confusion are mounting in Bangladesh over the next general election, which must be held by January 24th, 2014, with growing calls for general strikes and rallies as protest blooms. Let's discuss the road ahead for Bangladesh, also the unrest that we see right now. This week, I welcome Colonel Mohan, Strategic Affairs expert, and he is a war veteran as well of the 1971 war. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on World Panorama. No one better than you to tell us what's happening in Bangladesh right now. But before that, why don't we have a look at this small report?
Clashes broke out in Bangladesh as at least one person was killed and scores injured in attacks by the Jamaat-e-Islami activists. Bangladesh Supreme Court sentenced Abdul Kader Mollah, an Islamist leader, to death for war crimes during the 1971 War of Independence.
In case of Kader Mollah's case, 2 appeals were filed against the judgment and order of conviction, one by the government asking for enhancement of sentence from life to death, another by the accused for setting aside the conviction. The government appeal has been allowed unanimously, and on charge number 6, he has been awarded sentence of death.
The War Crimes Tribunal found Mollah, Assistant Secretary General of the Jamaat-e-Islami party, guilty of murder, rape, torture on February 5th. Activists opposing orthodox and fundamentalist Jamaat-e-Islami held a rally at Dhaka to welcome the verdict.
He has got the highest verdict, punishment that this government and the state can give, and I think this is for us a position and a point that we will ensure that the 1971 Liberation War is not, the spirit is not dead, and we shall overcome.
Well, I strongly refused the first judgment, 5th of February. That was not impartial. We didn't found any justice. Justice delay, justice denied. But I am very happy from my heart and soul, justice done.
Bangladesh has been hit in recent months by a wave of violent protest over war crimes convictions, presenting the government with a security and credibility challenge ahead of polls early next year. More than 100 people have been killed in protest and counter-protest since January, when the tribunal delivered its first verdict. In July, a court declared Jamaat-e-Islami illegal, effectively banning it from election. 6 party leaders have been convicted of various war crimes in connection with the 1971 War of Independence. The war trials have angered Islamist and the main opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party, who call them a politically motivated bid to persecute the leadership of Jamaat. The government has denied the charges. The tribunal has so far convicted 3 other Jamaat leaders to death and sentenced 1 to life in jail.
Colonel Mohan, let me start by asking you as to what's happening. We've been seeing, the verdicts coming in the war crimes of 1971 and protests one after the other. Explain to us what's the situation in Bangladesh.
You see, Bangladesh has there's a 40-year-old history of war crimes. It's very unfortunate that such a long time is taken to punish the guilty because of the internal politics and all that. In the instance case of Mullah Kader, who is also known as the butcher of Mirpur.
That's right.
He killed as many as 300 people recorded in a short period and as a very, very young man. So the verdict was for him to be imprisoned, which has now been
turned to a death penalty.
Converted to death penalty. Unfortunately, the political system in Bangladesh, the climate is such that even today, a country which is a free country is being ruled, I won't say ruled, but is being influenced by a section of people who are still thinking of good old Pakistani days, which is very unfortunate.
Right. In fact, Bangladesh is not new to a turbulent history, a history that has involved military coups, bloody turmoil. How do you see this developing? Because elections are also coming up now, and Jamaat-e-Islami is seen, as a rival party to the ruling party right now, an ally of the rival party. How do you see the politics developing? Do you see more politics being played over these?
I think there'll be much more turbulence in the days to come, because they're supposed to have elections before 24th of January. And as that date comes nearer, there'll be more turbulence for 2-3 reasons. One is the main opposition party, the BNP, is demanding election under a caretaker government, which the present dispensation is not agreeing to that. Second is Jamaat has been outlawed by the court to take part in the elections. So all the cadre of Jamaat, which of course support BNP, are out on the street to prove that they are still a force.
Right.
So the turbulence is going to continue.
Absolutely, that's quite unfortunate. Now, tell us a bit more about the way things are proceeding in Bangladesh and how, because India, when asked, India has been quite good in relations with Bangladesh, with the current ruling party right now. How are things really going to affect India, if we talk about India in terms of Bangladesh?
India in Bangladesh, where I travel a lot, is taken as an elder brother. Now, here comes the catch. And as an elder brother, we have not been able to fulfill a few promises we made. The 2 major glaring promises are the Tista river water, which should have been by now solved. And second is the conclaves, the 2 conclaves on either side, the 51,000 people who are living on either side without governance. That should have been done now. The foreign minister was here, Mrs. Deepu Moni. She met everybody, but I'm sorry to say that we have not been able to
come to a
respond positively to these 2 requirements, which may have a bearing on the elections in that country.
All right. When you say bearing on the elections of the country, could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Bearing means the opposition is always waiting to pounce on the failures of the current government, of Awami League government, and they also are trying to whip up an anti-Indian sentiment.
Right.
And when they say that India has not done A, B, C, D, and G, then the people sit down and start listening to all that.
Right. So now going back to the trials, there's this trading of charges now with the, opposition and Islamist parties. They say these trials are politicized and they're not fair. And why are they only happening after a 40-year gap? So that is also a cause of concern over there, because these kind of statements stir more violence and more unrest, and we already have seen the death of 2 people in Bangladesh, and the violence, as you said, is not getting any better. It's going to get worse, perhaps.
What I see is the liberation sentiment, as I call it, is still very strong in the population of Bangladesh. And the younger generation has not forgotten the sacrifice by the Bangladesh people, the murders which have taken place in Dhaka University and all over. You must have seen the agitation which was taking place 2 months back, and they were very strong on the secular credentials of the country. That apart, there are elements who are bound to disrupt it because of many considerations, including narrow parochial religious sentiments.
Right. I also want to ask you about a report that I read that has come out recently about the Human Rights Watch, saying that these verdicts that are coming out, these trials that are going on, they're not up to international standards. So, having said that, does it have any bearing? Will it really affect things in a way, or will the present government, the dispensation and the courts over there keep on ruling in the same manner, thereby sparking more unrest and protests across
the government of Bangladesh, the Awami League government of Bangladesh has ensured that the nature of trial is international. So, officially it is international tribunal which is trying, and is being monitored by a lot of countries and people of eminence. So to say that the trials are not just will not buy. And the population as such has been clamoring for these people to be hung because their fathers, their mothers, grandfathers, they have all been butchered.
Right.
Nobody wants to forget that.
Right. So there is a section that feels that justice has been done, and perhaps no matter if it incites violence right now, but the situation is quite fragile in Bangladesh. I want to take in your last thoughts on how things are going to go ahead. How are they looking from here on, let's say till the elections?
Well, I feel the current government in Bangladesh has also to be blamed to an extent. The charges of corruption, charges of mismanagement, charges of siding with as they view it, siding with India. These are a few things which are very rife in the public domain over there.
Right.
And I feel this is the time, if the corrective steps are taken even now, then there's a hope that the same dispensations may come back. Otherwise, I can only feel a lot of turbulence.
All right, turbulence over there. Colonel Mohan, thanks so much for joining us. We must also remember that Bangladesh is not only fighting this unrest right now and looking forward to elections, but the nation is also poverty-stricken. Economically, it needs to step up its game a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on World Panorama and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's take a very quick break. On the other side, the latest from Syria as the UN confirms the use of sarin gas. Assad says he needs $1 year and $1 billion to destroy the chemical weapons. I'll be back. Thanks for staying with us. Supporting Bashar al-Assad, Russia sharply criticized the new United Nations report on Syria's chemical arms use on Wednesday as biased and incomplete, hardening Kremlin's defense of the Syrian government even while pressing ahead with a plan to disarm its arsenal of the internationally banned weapons. Russia, which has veto power in the Security Council, could cite such doubts about the proof of culpability in opposing future efforts by the United States, Britain and France to punish Syria for any violations of a deal to abandon chemical weapons.
Reiterating his denial of Syrian regime being involved in the 21st August chemical attack, President Bashar al-Assad said he was committed to the US-Russia agreement on dismantling weapons. But destroying the stockpiles would cost $1 billion and would take roughly a year. Russia, Syria's closest ally, vowed to bring forth evidence that chemical weapons were used by rebels. But the United Nations says its report is undisputable.
There was a report on the 21st of August incident. The findings in that report are indisputable. They speak for themselves. And this was a thoroughly objective report on that specific incident.
Amid the contradictions and international diplomatic efforts, NATO has made it clear military strike is still an option on the table.
I think it's essential for keeping momentum in the diplomatic and political process that the military option is still on the table. I think irrespective of the outcome of the deliberations in the UN Security Council, the military option will still be on the table.
Russia on its part continued to oppose UN Security Council resolution on Syria's chemical weapons. The US-Russia deal reached on Saturday calls for Syria to account fully on its chemical weapons within a week and for the removal and destruction of entire arsenal by mid-2014. Meanwhile, battles continue to rage in Syria while key powers met to forge a deal that would eliminate Syrian chemical weapons. More than 1 lakh people have been killed in Syria's insurgency, which grew out of street protests in the southern town of Deira in March 2011. Marking the International Day of Peace, United Nations called on all nations to honor the day with a cessation of violence, especially in war-torn Syria.
A hurricane season that started slowly has turned deadly in Mexico. A pair of ferocious tropical systems have killed at least 100 people across the country, damaged or destroyed 35,000 homes and left as many as 40,000 tourists stranded in Acapulco. Storms Manuel and Ingrid created a deadly pincher across the country starting last Friday, the former from Pacific side and the latter from the Gulf of Mexico, combining to create a serious weather situation, the likes of which has not been seen since 1958.
Dozens of flights cancelled and thousands trapped in Acapulco City, stranded by severe rains that flooded the entire airport area. A heavy storm from the Pacific has marooned an estimated 40,000 tourists for 3 days in the Pacific resort. 55 people had died so far in the floods.
We are desperate because we cannot return to our city or jobs. Our time at the hotel is up, so we will see if they support us any further. As they say, they will continue to provide us with a room. If not, we will see what we can do, but still there is no hope of returning.
The tropical storms Manuel and Ingrid affected 2/3 of the country so far. The rain has caused losses of over $387 million, besides disrupting supplies to the supermarket.
When I went out to the streets were flooded. We went out, it was raining outside. We could not enjoy the beaches or anything else.
Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto has tweeted that he has ordered a house-by-house census and told the Federal Transport Ministry to establish an air bridge to Mexico City.
The federal government is making and sending out its best effort to have an adequate coordination with state authorities so that in the face of this climatic event and with the damages the natural forces is generating, we are able to act in a timely, optimal and efficient manner, and we are able to provide the necessary support to the families who are unfortunately being affected.
The U.S. National Hurricane Center says the danger is not yet over, as the rains can still produce life-threatening floods and mudslides in eastern Mexico.
Much else has been unfolding around the world. Here's a quick wrap of other international news of the week. A police officer was killed and 48 people arrested after Egyptian security forces clashed with gunmen on Thursday during an operation in a town on Cairo's outskirts. Police and army soldiers took back control of Kerdassa's main streets from Islamist groups as a result of the raids, although there were still pockets of armed resistance in some areas. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani vowed that his government would never develop nuclear weapons, his strongest signal yet that they may be seeking a diplomatic thaw with the West after decades of acrimony. In an interview with NBC News days before he travels to New York for a UN appearance, the new Iranian president also insisted he had complete authority to negotiate a nuclear deal with the United States and other Western powers. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe instructed Tokyo Electric Power Company to decommission the number 5 and number 6 reactors at the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. It was his first visit to the plant since he made headlines in Japan and overseas when he called the nuclear crisis under control in a speech to the International Olympic Committee in Argentina, which many claim helped Tokyo clinch the 2020 Summer Games. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has called off a state visit to Washington next month in a row over allegations of US espionage. The US National Security Agency has been accused of intercepting emails and messages from Rousseff, her aides and state oil company Petrobras. The allegations were based on documents leaked by fugitive former intelligence contractor Edward Snowden. At least 13 people were confirmed dead in the Washington, D.C.'s Navy Yard mass shooting, including a suspect who's been identified as 34-year-old Aaron Alexis. The deceased gunman purportedly behind Monday's shooting rampage was from Texas. A dozen or more injured at the Naval Sea Systems Command, one of 5 such commands where civilians, military personnel and contractors build and maintain Navy ships and submarines. Shifting gears, time to bring you up to speed with all the sports news that you might have missed this week. Here's all the sports action.
Several Russians and head of a Russian human rights organization that works with immigrants complained that Sochi police and Cossacks detained dozens of people on raids on Wednesday, meant to rid the city of illegal immigrants ahead of the 2014 Olympic Games. The dragnet, which a coordinator for the human rights group Migration Law said, were carried out as a direct order of the regional government to clean the city and snare Russian citizens. Top season 2012 champions Czech Republic were drawn on Wednesday to play the opening round of the 2014 Davis Cup World Cup competition at home to the Netherlands. Serbia, the 2010 champion, was drawn to meet Switzerland, which could pit world number 1 Novak Djokovic against Roger Federer from 31st January to 2nd February. The 32-time titleist United States will host 9-time winner Great Britain, led by Andy Murray. 9-time champion France is set to challenge Australia, the 28-time titleist, while number 2 ranked Rafael Nadal may feature for Spain in its away tie against Germany. World number 1 Tiger Woods is reportedly targeting his 6th victory of the season to become the PGA Tour Player of the Year with this week's Tour Championship at Eastlake Golf Club. Although the 14-time major winner has not claimed a major title since the 2008 US Open, he's one of the 5 players in the elite field of 30 who can land overall playoff honors and the $10 million bonus with victory this week, as he's the top seed in the FedEx Cup point standings going into the PGA Tour season finale. Former heavyweight boxer Ken Norton, who broke Muhammad Ali's jaw in the 1937 bout, died at the age of 70. Norton started boxing in the United States Marine Corps and turned professional after his discharge in 1967. In 1973, he broke Ali's jaw during their first fight, claiming the North American Boxing Federation heavyweight title in a split decision over 12 rounds. Norton retired from the ring in 1981, ending his career with 42 wins, 7 losses and a draw. He had 33 knockouts.
Time now for all the very latest news from the world of movies, music and lifestyle. Here's our entertainment wrap. Pop star Madonna has released a string of politically charged black and white trailer clips to promote her short film set for release on 24th September. In one trailer, My Country, 'Tis of Thee, is sung over images of Madonna sitting somberly behind bars. In another trailer, Madonna is heard saying democracy doesn't seem to exist anymore, and yet another has the singer pointing a gun down on someone's head. Big names like Beyoncé, Justin Timberlake and Muse rocked out on stage for Mega Music Festival Rock in Rio. Begun in 1985, the festival is in its 13th edition and welcomed a wide range of musical talents from Alicia Keys to David Guetta. This is Rio's 5th time hosting the festival. The festival has also passed through Madrid and Lisbon. Kerry Washington, the Emmy-nominated actress for her role in the ABC television drama Scandal, is the world's best-dressed woman. Washington headed a list of style icons in the People magazine award that included Academy Award winner Jennifer Lawrence, singer-songwriter Solange Knowles, new mother Jenna Dewan Tatum, and newlywed actress Kate Bosworth. One of America's landmark homes, the Miami Beach mansion that once belonged to Italian fashion designer Gianni Versace, was sold at an auction for $41.5 million to a business group. The 1930s-era Mediterranean-style estate, which has 10 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms and a pool inlaid with 24-karat gold, was auctioned off as part of a bankruptcy proceeding by its current owner, telecom magnate Peter Lofton. The highly anticipated Grand Theft Auto 5, the fifth installment of the mega popular video game series, came out Tuesday to the delight of its many fans. Eager gamers lined up overnight to be the first ones to snap up a copy of the game, with some stores started selling at 12:01 a.m. GTA 5, which is rumored to have cost $265 million to produce and promote, is predicted by some analysts to bring in $1 billion in sales.
Suppose a group hug's out of the question. So what we doing here?
We're working, amigo.
That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. See you next week, same time, with more international news. Till then, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This week, I close the show with pearls, one of nature's riches, cherished by kings, queens and movie stars. London's Victoria and Albert Museum hosted a rare pearl exhibition showcasing pearls adorned once by royalty. This is me, Sana Khan, signing off.